Hamjambo. It's good to see you this morning. My name is Mashirima Kapombe. I am a journalist with Citizen TV Kenya. And for this panel discussion, I will be your moderator. And so the eve of the International Women's Day, Happy Women's Month. Happy Women's Month. This month is full of women, but you guys don't look happy. Are you happy? Yes. Okay. So on this eve of the International Women's Day, as I was driving here, I was listening to Shaggy's iconic song, Strength of a Woman. And I thought, even when I use this line, it sounds so cliche. But when you think about it, 22 years after that song was released, women are strong. They go through so much. And I'll give an example that when you think about how much a woman is able to achieve with very little investment, then you realize how much strength women have. For example, a woman leaves her country for domestic work or care work abroad. With just a small bag, a few personal effects, she gets there, hopeful that she will get a humane employer and she will be able to transform the lives of her families back home. And the little money that she gets, she sends it back home. And within no time, her family is not struggling as much as they were before she left. Now, imagine a world where that leap of faith that a woman takes is not so risky. That she is assured of her rights, despite of her migration status, and where she's at on her journey. Every stage of her journey, she's assured of her rights. Now, this is the core of our panel discussion this morning with the theme, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress for Gender Equality and Safe Migration. But first, we begin with the national anthem and a prayer. Let's all stand for the national anthem. Kindly appoint John Jordan for prayer.
Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, we come before you this morning. Thank you for who you are and you have been and whom you have promised to be in our lives. We thank you for this precious opportunity you have afforded us to be here and you have gathered us to celebrate this vital occasion, Women's Day. We thank you and pray from you that, Father, you lead us, you guide us in all the discussion, deliberations, and at the end of the day, will be fruitful, O Lord. We thank and glorify you in Jesus' name.
Amen. Please be seated. And now, as we begin, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Stella Chepiano and Irene Kilini from the Office of the First Lady. And I would like to call upon Madame Jerry Kanyete, the University Dean of Law at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, to welcome us officially as our hosts. Karibu sana. You can take this staircase or the other one, but I think this one is closer. Karibu.
Old lady here. I represent my boss, the Vice Chancellor, who is a man and a priest. So when I start representing you, I have to be very proper, but now I just want to say how grateful we are to see all of you here. Beautiful, lovely ladies, beautiful colors, beautiful smiles, beautiful scents. And for the men who have come to support us, and do feel very, very welcome here. Mashima and I can go into my official pitch. I need to hold this down. Okay. Thank you. Your Excellency, Katarina Legidonova, the Slovak Ambassador to Kenya, Your Excellency Dimanche Sharon, the Chief of Mission, UNIOM Kenya, Dr. Josephine Obonyo, Secretary State Department of Gender and Affirmative Action, Ms. Ruth Olo, Gender Lead, MasterCard Foundation, Ms. Memory Kachambwa, CEO, FemNet, Ms. Adley Gamaro, as you see here already, a student at TUC, Mr. Anthony Wafula, Business and Development Manager, Havos, distinguished members, very, very distinguished visitors, distinguished members of the Quayle family, my fellow deans and directors of schools present here, and our students who are the real VIPs on this occasion. I greet you all in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and I stand here in your presence this morning at the behest of our university rector and vice chancellor, the very Reverend Professor Stephen Wangari, who is our host for the day. Our vice chancellor is a great friend of IOM Kenya, but much as we have loved to be here today to host this function in person, he is unable to because of our pressing prior engagement. I may disclose here that Professor Mbogwa plays a leading role in various governmental and intergovernmental educational task forces, and this being the time of the year that so much is happening in the higher education sector, he had no choice but to be elsewhere today. And so please do accept his apologies and his personal apologies to you, Madam Dimanche. He would have loved to be here to host you personally. My instructions are simple and to the point. That one, I welcome you to this beautiful gathering, tell you a little about our university, and declare this panel discussion officially open. I'm sure this is, you agree with me that this is a very pleasant brief, although I cannot wait to get to remove the busy shoes and get back into my comfortable slippers. Now, in line with her vision, core values, and the philosophy of Catholic higher education that she subscribes to, the Catholic University of Eastern Africa endeavors in all her undertakings to create safe spaces and an enabling environment where all women and men together employ and enjoy their God-given talents and capabilities with few or no limitations. And this is in their quest for personal development and growth and for the collective benefit of our university and the communities who we serve. We are community service arm. Without going to specifics, CWEA has invested heavily in gender equality for sustainable development. In staff numbers, and there's somebody here from the gender office, I'm hoping you're taking note, the female-male ratio, right from top management through to support staff, far exceeds the constitutional 1/3 prescription. CWEA strives to do even better on this score. Being cognizant of the fact that numbers are just but a small mitigation measure in closing the ever-growing gender gaps in the workplace, CWEA has put in place various policies which have greatly benefited women. To name but a few, CWEA, as an equal opportunity employer, has put in place a robust staff development and training program. In order to better protect women and young girls in the workplace, CWEA has put in place the Child and Vulnerable Adult Protection and Sexual Harassment policies. It is against this backdrop that CWEA has always supported initiatives which celebrate and showcase women's achievements and agency in furtherance of our mission. One such initiative in the celebration of International Women's Day. We are on record as being about the only university in this country that celebrates Women's Day every year, hosted by our rector, the Vice Chancellor himself, and marking the occasions with value-adding activities for students, staff, faculty, and the communities which we serve. As is our tradition, in every activity, CWEA endeavors to remain student-centered. We therefore wish to record our gratitude to Your Excellency, Madame Sharon, and through you to IOM Kenya for making CWEA your home of choice in hosting this year's event and also for customizing it to a student's affair. As we thank IOMK for this convening, we do hope that the reasoning behind making CWEA an avenue of choice is not informed only by our geographical positioning in the leafy suburbs of Karen and next door to a national park, or the East Auditorium, which is, I think, the only auditorium in this part of the world that's naturally air conditioned, good as they are. Rather, we believe that this choice is symbolic and was made in acknowledgement and recognition of who CWEA is, what she stands for, and the role she plays in matters of justice, be it social, economic, political, climate, and or gender justice. CWEA does not only subscribe to the Catholic philosophy via learning, but she walks the talk. In our teaching, research, and community service, we ask the hard questions and demand answers. We speak truth to power and assume responsibility for any consequences thereof. We are an institution of higher learning that breaks new frontiers in order to deliver value-based and value-adding higher education. Today's theme, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress for Gender Equality and Safe Migration, resonates well with the core of our being. As you very well know, we are a Christian university in the heart of the African continent. Intricately woven into the mosaic of our faith, life, culture, and history are stories and experiences of women and men who find themselves in the unfamiliar territory of migration, be it voluntary, economic, political, and or forced. Many years before Christ, the children of Israel, running away from a debilitating hunger caused by climate injustice, found refuge in Egypt. The story of baby Moses being rescued by his little sister Miriam, nurtured by his own mother Jochebed, disguised as a wet nurse, and brought up and role modeled by his foster mother, Princess Tamutis, Pharaoh's daughter, speaks volumes of women's agency in giving life and sustaining it. I need an applause there, please. No matter the circumstances, women give life and they also sustain it. Many years thereafter, when running away from the excesses of power and colonial oppression that many of us are familiar with, Jesus Christ and his own parents found solace as refugees in Africa. Again, a young girl Our mother Mary, hardly out of teenage, had the presence of mind to do whatever it took to save her son's life, thus changing the course of human history and in a migratory state. Through a sad twist of fate, though, Mother Africa has become the world's greatest producer of refugees. What agony, what travesty of justice this is. As an institution, therefore, migration is of more interest to us than a mere academic exercise. Your Excellency, Ms. Sharon, as you might have noticed during the debate that you hosted at the University of Nairobi on 8 December 2023 to commemorate the International Migrants Day, Kwea was represented by a fair number of immigrant students. Among these students are refugees who we support from our meager resources, and more importantly, to whom we avail safe spaces where they can pursue their education, grow their talents and careers in dignity and in an affirming environment. As a private university enjoying no governmental capitation, this is no mean feat. We are grateful that every year, in commemoration of one of our founders, the servant of God, Maurice Cardinal Otunga, we host a combo event, the Cardinal Otunga Memorial Mass Annual Lecture and Scholarship Fundraiser, where well-wishers come out to support us. Needless to say, the demands for financial assistance far exceed the donations we receive, and we'll be grateful for more from as many sources as possible. Our dream as a university is that one day we have a scholarship fund that caters specifically for refugee and indigent female students whose needs, including but not limited to protection from sexually gender-based violence, are more dire than their male counterparts. In the same vein, we have non-Kenyans in the rank of our staff and faculty. Again, some of these are refugees who have found a home and solace in Kenya, where assumes the responsibility of ensuring that they work in an environment that's friendly, safe, protected, and affirming. As an institution of higher learning, our core business is teaching, research, and community service. In this context, our university's triple responsibility as an incubation hub for intellectual and technological development is clearly spelled out. At the law school, where matters immigration find a natural home, we deliver quality legal education that's not only responsive to the needs of the market, but which adds value to the lives of the community which we serve, all the time taking cognizance of the fact that we are regional law school. We therefore think very carefully through our curricula for the three programs which we offer, that is Master of Laws, Bachelor of Laws, and Diploma in Law, and have them regularly peer reviewed and appraised by the relevant regulators. We have sister institutions in the Institute of Canon Law and the Center for Justice and Social Ethics, among others, who provide a formidable buttress as we deliver. Championing the cause of the migrant cannot be mediated within the lecture halls or in textbooks. So we embrace Pope Francis' call to Catholic institutions of higher learning is in this Communica Vita Christiana at the Kwea Law School, where we go forth from the cloisters of our lecture halls, our lofty professions, and our grandiose practice chambers to the periphery, where we engage hearts, heads, and hands in meeting real-life challenges of the communities we are called to serve. This morning at breakfast, someone mentioned about going to South B. I wish you had told us earlier, because we would have given you a contingent of students who could go and speak to them. We also serve underserved populations pro bono. And for instance, with Sharon, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear this, we teach women in informal sectors where the majority of migrants communities live, how to self-represent themselves in court if need be, and how to strategically lobby for services. I can therefore say without any fear of contradiction whatsoever that the Catholic University of East Africa remains a formidable change maker in her own right, and with a little support from my esteemed partners and collaborators most of work here today, we are poised to go far in advocating for increased investment in women and expedited progress in gender equality in order to pave the way for a more inclusive future for all. As I sign off, I wish you a rewarding discussion and a very happy and eventful International Women's Day 2024. And on behalf of our Rector and Vice Chancellor, the Very Reverend Professor Stephen Bogu Wangari, I now declare this panel discussion officially open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Njeri Kanyete, the University Dean of Law, Catholic University of Eastern Africa. And now, because we're talking about migration, I need to migrate as well to make sure that our comms team have the best picture. And this morning when I met Beroge, he asked me if I am a migrant, and I said no. And he said, were you born in Nairobi? And I said no. He said, you're a migrant. So we are all migrants. And I like that Madam Njeri quoted the Bible. And I don't want to try and quote the specifics, because right now in this country, when you quote something, you better be sure about what you're saying. And all I can think about is Ruth as a migrant. So at this juncture, allow me to welcome to the podium Sharon Dimanche, the Chief of Mission IOM Kenya, to give our opening. Sharon, I will ask you to migrate to this podium, and all other speakers who will be coming here, that we will have to use this one.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Hamjambo. Hamjambo. You guys sound like you're very old like me. You're young people. Hamjambo. Have you had a breakfast? Then you better respond with energy like young people, right? Happy International Women's Day Eve. Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks, Madam Njeri, for that very warm and beautiful remarks to each one of us. We're very, very grateful that you're hosting us here. My dear friend, Ambassador Katarina, thank you so much for coming, gracing this occasion. We have friends from Madam Stella and Madam Irene from the First Lady's office. A warm welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We have our director, Madam Wasike, representing the Principal Secretary, the State Department of Gender. Thank you really so much. And we have our distinguished panelists here this very morning. We have colleagues from Femnet, MasterCard Foundation, Kenya Airways here in our midst, plus several other colleagues from people and government officials, our distinguished students. I feel like how many years back when I was a student here, and I'm so excited to be with very young people. So really, thank you so much, each one of you, for coming this very morning to participate in this very event. But a big thanks to the Catholic University of Eastern Africa for hosting us. We don't take that for granted and very much appreciate that you enabled us to come here, and a very warm welcome this morning. I think as we approach the International Migrants Day, which of course is definitely happening tomorrow, but we thought it was important. I know we'll be having lots of events tomorrow, so we thought we need to have an event today dedicated migrant students so that we can hear from you, get to hear your voices, because they're very, very important when we talk about migration issues. So IOM joins the world in celebrating the International Migrants Day with a theme, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress for Gender Equality and Safe Migration. I like speaking when my hands are free, so now I seem to be imprisoned. I hope I can fix this here. So I'll be forced to hold it. I wanted us to think through and having this panel conversation with a story. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Yes. I'll start with a story, a very short story. I'll try to cut it short, but it's very long. It's of a young girl, 14 years, called Frida. I met Frida this morning, but it's a different Frida. Frida is born in a family of six or seven children, of course with her parents. And Frida didn't go to school. It's 3 girls, I think 4 boys. All the boys went to school, but Frida did not go to school. Then one morning, Frida, obedient as she was sent by her parents to go to a neighbor's home and bring a panga. Who knows what a panga is? I think something used for cutting. So Frida went to that home, and when she reached there, looking for a panga, and they told her, oh, just get into that house, go and pick it up yourself. So breastfeeding, she went in the house. Lo and behold, the door was shut behind her. So she remained in that house overnight. The following day, she was still crying. Just imagine a little 14-year-old locked up in a house, sleeping there, maybe even hungry because there's no food inside that house. Frida was coming in from one of the country X, I won't mention which country it is. And then, several days, given our norms and culture, Frida could not go back to her home because she had slept outside in somebody else's home. And fast forward, Frida was forced into marriage. And she was married to this very old man whose firstborn was about 30 years old. So meaning that 30 years old was, as I'm told I have 5 minutes, but if you can kindly allow me finish this story, because it's going to lay the foundation for our conversation today. So Frida remained in that home, and she got married to this old man, gave birth, and they moved from that country to another country. Why? She gave birth to 6 children, then her kids got really sick, this man abandoned her, and she had nowhere to go, seeking help. She lost her children, 3 of them in 1 week, all alone, and the other 3 kids eventually also started getting sick because of measles. And then one of the kids died, and she was left with only 2 children. And the other really got sick, and eventually Frida, with people helping her around, they moved her from that village to another village, where they took this one of the girls to the hospital, treated her, and she got better, went to school. So Frida determined in her heart, I have to take care of my children, I have to work, I don't know how. As a migrant, I'm here alone, a stranger, I make sure that my kids have to go to school. They don't have to go through the same experience I'm going through because I never went to school. I don't even know how to write my name, but my kids have to study. She really worked hard, and her children went to school, and one of the girls went to law school, became a lawyer, and she's here speaking to you here as the IOM information. If you look at migrants internationally, we have 281 million migrants. Out of those, 59% are women. And from the 59%, we have 156,300 who are victims of trafficking. Now, mathematicians here, we have 7 out of 10 victims of trafficking are women. So if you can multiply, get my mathematics well, I didn't pass mathematics very well, but if you get from 156,000 migrants who are victims of trafficking, then 7 out of 10, I'm sure you can get the numbers currently, who are victims as women. They have moved. If I look back at the Frida story, she was a victim of human trafficking. Now, coming to Kenya, if you look back at Frida, she really worked hard to take care of her family, to support everybody, and we are having so many of the Friedas out of the 281 million people who are on the move, working really hard, trying to support their families, send remittances back home. If you look at Kenyan remittances in 2020, we see how, despite COVID pandemic, we saw money coming into the country, and I think it's surpassed by about 30%. Now, as we speak currently, we are getting remittances contributing significant as #1 forex earner of money coming into Kenya, and this is coming in from migrants. So if you are having 59% of those as women, how much do you think women are contributing? And because of lack of data, it's very, very challenging to actually get to know how many numbers of female migrants are out there. But as women migrate, they go through lots of challenges. Exploitation, abuse, and so many others. And I guess also because of our cultural norms. They think women cannot migrate on their own as, single-headed groups that are moving, or as migrant workers, they need to be in company of a man, which is not true. If you look back at history, we see many more women on the move, on their own, supporting their families. So it's very, very important that we really need to look into, get back into our cultural norms. We come together, whole of government approach, whole of society approach, having even the youth in our midst to work together and see how can we contribute and support to ensure that we actually empower our women. Because if we empower our women, our sisters, our girls, I'm sure we are going to achieve the SDG 2030 agenda goals, which we are looking at reducing inequality and equality. Now, coming back quickly, I know I have run out of time, but just to highlight a few things that we do in IOM Kenya. In Kenya, we have quite a lot of programs that we are working on, and we are investing in women. Closely work with the government of Kenya, we are very, very active in ensuring that we really have policies and the legal framework to protect and empower women. Recently, I was in Ethiopia last week, and we were looking at how do we put together policies to protect migrant workers. How can government work together within this region to form an alliance to protect especially migrant women who are moving? And that's again the work that we do here through the Regional Ministerial Forum on Migration. But we have more programs on climate-induced migration and displacement to address that, so that women, because usually when there is displacement, we see many more women who are getting affected. If you remember during the El Nino time, we saw many women, children getting displaced. During drought, women would walk 60, 50 kilometers looking for water. Just imagine a woman with her back, with a child at her back, walking 60 kilometers on foot. How much water do you think she's going to bring? It's 20 liters, the maximum. And so she brings that. She's going to, try to weigh that opportunity cost to our economists here. And you see, okay, how much water will I use for my food, for drinking, maybe even for hygiene? Maybe others leave in the morning, come back the following morning, just because to bring a 20-liter jerrycan of water. Where have they slept? The insecurity, the sexual abuse. And this is what women are going through, just to take care of each one of us. So it's very important that we come together and see how we can really deliberately be intentional and protect and empower those women. We are not going to achieve sustainable development if we don't put women at the center of what we are doing. And I would like to commend the men in our midst this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Sometimes when we talk about International Migrants Day, we think it's just a women thing. But no, we cannot progress. We can't move an inch without women. And the men in our midst, thank you. I know you can't survive without us, so you need us. And that's why we need he for she. The men who are here supporting us, please continue supporting us. We have lots of programs, the reintegration programs we offer to women victims of trafficking, to men. We are not biased, we support everybody. But I would really want to hear from the panelists this morning, what can we do differently? Especially get the young minds especially those who are on the move. If you have 50%, it's not a small number. We have to work together and empower our sisters, our mothers, so that we don't have the many freedom. If my mother was educated, if she knew how to write her name, I don't think she would have gone through all that. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Sharon Imanch, Chief of Mission at IOM Kenya. As she said, we need to invest in women, right? We need to put in more investments in women so that we can be able to progress. And to enable us to understand how much or what our government is doing to ensure that women progress, allow me to welcome to the stage Grace Wasike, Director from the Ministry of Gender, to tell us more about all these investments that have been made. Let's give her a round of applause as she makes her way to the stage. Kindly use this side, it will be easier for you to get here.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, and thank you, Madam. No, my Shirima. Where have you disappeared? Okay, thank you for moderating. I'm going to do a speech on behalf of our peers for gender and affirmative action. She's called Madam Anne Wangombe. I know on the program we had our Secretary General who was supposed to do these remarks. So allow me on behalf of the State Department to give you these talking notes. And yeah, all protocols observed. Madam Sharon, Madam Jerry, I know you've spoken so well. I'm wondering whether I'll be a better speaker than you. But thank you for inviting the State Department to be part of this thing. So I'll go straight to the remarks by the Principal Secretary. So it gives me great pleasure to join you today on this auspicious occasion to mark the 2024 International Women's Day. We know that the Women's Day is tomorrow, but you've chosen to celebrate it on the eve of the Women's Day. At the same time, as a State Department, we would like you to join us tomorrow at Embu County. I know it has been in the news that we'll have the International Women's Day celebrated at the Embu County. And as a State Department, we are doing that especially for the counties that are under the female governors so that we give them support, and we hope that we continue getting more women governors, because I think you had the president even encouraging Kenyans to elect more women governors when he was in Homa Bay during an investment day in the Homa Bay County. You are aware that Homa Bay is also headed by a female governor. So, as with past years, this year's celebration serves as a platform for advocating for gender equality and amplifying efforts towards empowering women to their fullest potential. This day serves as a call of action for governments, organizations, and communities to recognize that securing the rights of women and girls across all spheres of life is fundamental to fostering the prosperous economies and safeguarding the well-being of our planet and future generations. I wish to appreciate IOM for organizing this year's International Women's Day celebration themed Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress for Gender Equality and Safe Migration. Today we celebrate all rural and urban women that have made significant changes in the lives of humanity. We celebrate the formally and informally employed women, the caregivers and homemakers who are mainly women and girls, the migrant workers in and out of the country who contribute to the development of this nation. You've heard from Madam Sharon that 59% of the proceeds from the migrant workers are contributed by women, because we've been told 59% of that group is women. We celebrate every visible and invisible woman working tirelessly to make Kenya and the world a better place, not forgetting all men behind the scenes supporting our great women. The State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action is committed to gender equality, equity, inclusiveness, diversity, gender responsiveness, non-discrimination and participation of all people. The Kenya government, through the Ministry of Gender, Culture and the Arts, is committed to advancing women empowerment through promoting gender equality and economic prosperity. Through the Sustainable Development Goals, the international community has a broad shared understanding that secures sustainable, inclusive economic growth that ensures full participation of women and girls. SDG 5 targets to achieve gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. The department is therefore committed to achieving this goal and all the gender-related targets in the SDGs. I'm trying to shorten. The government of Kenya recognizes the role of migrant workers in the economy of our country, and the migrant workers in 2023 remitted 4.1 billion Kenya shillings. So this is quite a big figure, 4.19 billion. It's against this background that His Excellency the President gave a directive that a comprehensive mapping of all skills within the country be undertaken to ensure that we map skills to employment, and therefore we have a National Employment Authority integrated system portal that has been put up by the government to link job seekers with formal and informal employers within the country and abroad. The State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action has initiated the development of legislative frameworks that will address some of the gender gaps in development. They include the National Care Policy, which will address, among other issues, challenges faced by the migrant workers. Because you've been told that most of these women, when they go out there, they do domestic care work. So this policy that the Gender Department is spearheading, and we hope that it will be through by the end of this year, we'll be able to support those migrant workers who are within Kenya and those ones who are working in the countries of destination. There's also a national policy on women economic empowerment, and this will support advancement of women in business and other sectors. To truly empower women economically, we must create an enabling environment to facilitate their empowerment, and the ministry, through the State Department for Gender, is taking these necessary steps to provide that. And we know that if we empower our country economically, we are even going to reduce the number of migrants to other countries, because you've also been told by the earlier speakers that the migrants who go to other countries, sometimes they face issues of abuse, and their rights are violated as human beings. We also have a national policy on prevention and response to gender-based violence, which is under review, to ensure that we incorporate issues of migrant workers in both countries of origin and destination. In addition to the above initiatives, the government has made strides in addressing women's access to capital. The Public Finance Management Act ensures the implementation of various affirmative action programs for the empowerment of women, youth, and persons with disability. This includes the Women Enterprise Fund, the Uwezo Fund, and I hope you are aware that the Women Enterprise Fund has gone digital, and maybe some of the students have already accessed that fund. And then we also have, you are aware of the Hustler Fund, and we also have the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, which is also supporting women and youth. And we also have the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. The country is also implementing preferential 30% access to government procurement opportunities, which aims at enhancing procurement opportunities for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. These procurement opportunities are implemented at both national and county levels. It is in this line that we urge more of those in the formal and informal sectors to join the government and implement the preferential access to procurement opportunities. Addressing women's limited access to capital for economic ventures is critical for financial inclusion. The continuous marginalization of women necessitated the government to implement the affirmative action funds as indicated above. To enhance cross-border trade, you are aware that we are members of various economic blocs, including East African Community, the African Continental Free Trade Area, through the AU has also been put in place to ensure that there is seamless trade across the African countries. So what the State Department is doing is to ensure that we capacity build the women entrepreneurs who are mainly in small businesses to see how they are going to benefit from those regional blocks. So this is something that is ongoing. And alongside that, we also bring out issues of SDDV to ensure that as the women trade, they are not subjected or exploited through sexual exploitation. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, let us seize the opportunities presented by the International Women's Day to renew our commitment on gender equality and women's empowerment. Let us stand in solidarity with women and girls and pledge to do our part to build a more equitable, just, and fair world for all. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Madam Grace Wasike from the Ministry of Gender for giving us an overview of the efforts that government is putting in to make sure that migrants, at least from Kenya and within Kenya, are treated fairly. And at this point, I would like us all to get into our panel discussion, and I'll call our panelists onto the stage one by one. I know they know themselves, but I will do so in a manner that makes them feel important because they have chosen to spend this day with us, right? So we have to accord them the respect that they deserve. And I'll start with Her Excellency Katarina Liligodova, the Slovak Ambassador to Kenya. She's an ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the Slovak Republic to the Republic of Kenya, concurrently serving as the permanent representative of Slovakia to UNEP and UN Habitat, with a background in political science from the University of Constantine, the philosopher in Mitra. She has been actively engaging with Africa since 2005 within the framework of multilateral diplomacy. She worked as the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Slovak Republic to the UN for the Environment and Human Settlements Program in Nairobi, and later in Ethiopia as the Permanent Representative of the Slovak Republic to the African Union in Addis Ababa. Please feel free to have a seat. Our second panelist is a male champion. He's a journalist as well. Anthony Wafula is an international development specialist, an award-winning journalist, and a Rotarian. He has over 20 years of experience in organizational leadership, program development and management, resource mobilization, strategic communication, journalism, research, monitoring, and evaluation. He is currently serving as a business development manager at the Hivos Foundation, where he leads fundraising and program development in civic rights for the African region. Karibu sana. Our third panelist is Miss Ruth Olo. Ruth is the gender program lead at the Mastercard Foundation, an organization that seeks a world where everyone has the opportunity to learn and prosper. She has over 15 years of experience in gender and inclusion, from working in the humanitarian sector with refugees and asylum seekers, and in the development sector, both in the country and global programs. Karibu sana. Thank you for joining us. Our fourth panelist, Memory Kachambwa. Memory is currently the Executive Director at Femnet. She's a Pan-African intersectional feminist, gender and women's rights activist with deep experience in organizing and advocating for feminist policies at the regional, national, and international levels. She's a seasoned cross-cultural thought leader and strategist, bridging national, regional, and global women's rights networks with policy leaders. Karibu Memory. Our fifth panelist, who is very engaging, and you will see when she gets here, Mrs. Adelaide Amaro. She is currently the manager, quality control and integrity, and the project lead for counter-trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants for Kenya Airways. Adelaide has over 30 years experience in the aviation industry and has held various administration and management positions both locally and internationally. Karibu sana. And last but not least, our sixth panelist is Noella Muziranenge. Noella recently graduated from the Technical University of Kenya with a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations and Diplomacy. During her time at the university, she was the international student representative in the period from 2021 to 2022. She is interested in peace, integration, human rights, and gender in international relations based on the history of her country, which is Rwanda. Karibu sana. At this point again, I will invite and join all of you here on stage so that we can begin our discussion. And it's all about investing in women and accelerating progress for migrants and ensuring gender equality and safe migration. And I'll start with you, Her Excellency Katarina. And this is a personal question. was the first time that you migrated from your home? And can you share your experience as a woman migrant?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to, of course, first of all greet you all, and thank you for opportunity to sit here and talk about a very specific and important issue on the academia, which I consider to be very important. So thank you very much. Answer straight away. I migrated for the first time, actually, from my country. For the first time, I left the borders of at the time Czechoslovakia. And it was in 1988 when I was 10 years old, and I migrated, I traveled to Nigeria, to Lagos. So this is very specific story. Maybe at the end, when I'll be a little bit more personal, I'll explain how this experience has shaped me and my future as a person, as well as a professional. But before, if I may step in, diplomats are sometimes difficult to deal with. But I just want to as well specify something else about me. And the reason why I support strongly empowerment personally of women and as professionally is that as well I have an experience working in Vienna. And I worked in a very specific field on non-proliferation, arms control, and control of the ballistic missile program. So I worked in very male-oriented and security-based environment. And the second thing that I consider important is that I worked in Slovakia for 2 presidents, meanwhile, before coming to Kenya. And why I'm saying this is because the second one I worked for was a female, and it was the first ever female president elected in my country, not only as a Slovakia but as a former Czechoslovakia. So I have had an experience working for a female in a very high position, and I strongly feel that this is the future. So this is just to let you know what has as well shaped me into the person who I am now.
And can you tell us briefly what kind of opportunities that you are able to realize from the moment that you migrated and you became an adult, how that shaped your experiences?
If I may, I'll use 8 minutes, promise, but maybe to give you a bit of a background, it's not that what has happened after I migrated, but what has actually happened before, and that simply I was able to leave my country, because I don't know whether you are aware, there was this thing called in Europe Iron Curtain. Are you aware of it? Iron Curtain. After the Second World War, the world was divided into West and East. And Iron Curtain meant physically that you were actually not allowed to leave your country unless you have a specific permission to do so. So there was no free movement from the eastern part of the bloc around the world. If you wanted to travel, you had to have a specific permission. If you tried to leave the country illegally, unfortunately, usually it ended up with loss of life or imprisonment. So it's not only. So it is crucial as well to be able to migrate and leave your country. What has happened, of course, later on, we were allowed to travel. There was a change of mood because, of course, people are always creative, would like to meet other people, and it's not sustainable. You can never, ever keep people locked in one space. Simply, there was this spring movement in Europe, and the Iron Curtain was lifted. And at the time, it was the first time we could travel freely. People could travel freely to Slovakia and Czechoslovakia at the time. And we started very crucially cooperation, cross-border cooperation with knowledge sharing, innovation sharing that helped our country to thrive. Why I'm saying this is because 50% of the population comprises of females, of course. So this situation, inability to travel or share experiences, knowledge, has influenced more than 50% of the population of the region, meaning the whole, at least 3 generations of females. And it did have a consequence on the country. Currently, Slovakia is very successful, EU member, NATO member, Schengen. We went through a strong transformation, and this is what we do in Kenya. So we are focusing on the knowledge sharing of our transformation experiences, and you cannot do it without bringing in and out people, without people traveling, meeting, either in academia or in any other different expertise fields. So this is just to answer your question when you said, or Sharon, you said, how to empower women. Two things. First thing, the woman has to be in executive position to be able to create strategies, influencing the development in the society. And the second one, of course, is to be able to share the knowledge and transformation. So this is just to show you, to let you know that in Europe, there were times that you were not able to travel, and if you try to, you most likely lost your life.
Thank you so much. Anthony, as a journalist and international development specialist, of course there are a lot of narratives surrounding women migrants that we highlight ourselves on the news on Citizen TV. But how can we shift the focus from portraying women migrants solely as victims and vulnerable individuals to recognizing them as agents of change?
Thank you, Mashirima. I think that's been something that has been troubling me at a personal level because every day I observe certain things, and I think my journalistic nose has never disappeared. And for those of us who use gold roads, as you approach carrying around your trolley, you will see a group of hawkers there. For those of that route, just take time and speak to them, and you'll find that most of them are Rwandese, if not Burundi. Then for some of us who get shamed, check your barbers, and again ask who are those that are shaming you. Chances are they're going to be Rwandese, they're going to be Burundians. If you go to so many massage parlors, they're genuine ones. Who are those doing those kind of jobs there? Then come to our homes. I come from Western Kenya, and I was brought up in a household where I used to see people coming in and out. And mostly were women who are looking for work. And they'll come, do their bit, disappear. Within probably 1 year or 2 years, go through so many hands. And there's so many examples. Then sometimes back, we were just having conversation with colleagues, and somebody reminded us that in the 70s, if I'm not wrong, when one of our neighboring countries was having a challenge, Kenyans benefited a lot by having teachers from Uganda, especially in the western part of Kenya, who came and taught and stayed here, and we actually never saw them as people from other countries. And then I asked myself, so what changed that today we are so conscious of who you are, where you're coming from, and where you're taking our jobs? And I think that's a conversation that we need to have amongst ourselves, that at the moment you leave your country to go another place, you do not stop being a human being. You do not stop having that knowledge and skills that you had. And these are some of the stories that we don't tell, partly because these communities are invisible to most of us. We simply see them as a source of cheap labor. In most cases, we see them as a source of competition and healthy competition. And we don't even involve them in very basic civic engagement processes. Ask them what they need, what their challenges are, what opportunities are available for them. In most cases, going to be discrimination. So changing this narrative is going to be something that has to begin at a personal level because we all interact in one way or another with our migrant colleagues who are coming here. But again, from that frame of mind that they're just here for a short time, so I'll throw one or two things to them. So our biggest job is to find out first, what common values do we have with them? First, we are all human beings. And what makes you happy is what makes me happy. What makes you alive is what makes you alive. So why should I look at you differently, for instance? So when you start changing that frame of mind, it becomes easier. But going deep, you also find that we also experience these circumstances differently. And we think about women. In most cases, we look at them as mama fours and all that, and again, they're also sexually assaulted. And experiences are something that at times we don't tell enough of these stories. And that's why that victim comes out at the top. I really want to see a situation where we've walked with them the journey, gone to school, we've supported them, and tell the story of this migrant worker who came here and transformed their lives. These stories are here, but we don't tell them. So I think the frame is for us to start acknowledging the common values that we share as human beings, the empathy that we need to show, and most importantly, the added value that we see our migrant colleagues bring on board, because we hardly tell those stories. We only wait to see when things go bad and say, those are refugees who did that, those are migrants who did that, and that kind of stuff. So this narrative thing is going to be something that we pick it up individually, but then also as institutions, it's something we need to start interrogating and say, how do we include them in all processes that we think they need to be participating in?
Do you think that ratifying and implementing laws that ensure that their human rights are protected will change that?
Yes, it will. But ratifying is not enough. We've got enough laws that take care of everyone. I mean, look at our Bill of Human Rights, Bill of Rights here, that speaks about who we are. Look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I think Kenya is a signatory to that as well. Look at the first article, which actually guarantees our dignity as human beings, and how should be treated. So it's not for lack of laws. I think it's just a perception that we have. The laws are there, implementation is there. And think about it this way. The people who, I've got friends who run Airbnbs here, and you find that people know where Nigerians stay, people know where this group stays, and every Friday or Monday morning, whom do you see there first? Policemen. What do they want? Extortion and money. Are these people not doing, of course there could be people who are doing legitimate things, but there are quite a number who are earning and living legitimately. So how do we change that narrative? Yes, we're enforcing the law, but this person has come and has got the right papers and can prove that I'm here legally, but we still go ahead and start shaking them up and down. So for me, it's not the lack of laws. I think it's much deeper than that, that knowing that these laws are here, that should make us not exploit others, but look at it as a means of uplifting them, so that again we got what we call shared prosperity. So it's just about showing that we all add value in different ways, the diversity that we bring. For instance, if you got a French-speaking migrant, why don't we take advantage of that and learn an extra language, for instance, and create opportunities where even our children can benefit. But we spend so much money trying to learn these languages in some other spaces yet we can easily make it easy for them to teach us and let us move along. So laws are there, we could ratify, but it's a change of attitude, if not behavior, that's going to make a difference.
We do need to look deeper within ourselves. I'd like to now invite Ruth Ono to respond to the next question, but I would also like to inform the audience that we will have a session of Q&A. So as you listen, jot down what you'd like our panelists here to expound more on. Ruth, you work for an organization that seeks a world where everyone has an opportunity to learn and prosper. So how can we progress towards a more inclusive sector that promotes the human rights of women, migrants, and achieves gender parity? It's on now, I think. Just speak into it, just try.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Shuma, for that question. And I would really like to pick from what my brother has said, really around seeing people for who they are and seeing them as human beings, because we believe at the Mastercard Foundation that everyone has an opportunity to actually learn and prosper. And it is such a pleasure to have this conversation amongst young people, because they are the driving force of our economies, they are the future of Africa. And at Mastercard Foundation, we really believe in the inclusion of the person or of the people that have been left behind. And when we talk about migrants and other persons of concern, we've seen for a very, very long time. Kenya is a host to very many refugees. Others are in the camp, others are in urban settlements. But then, how is it that we still have restriction of movement? How is it that a young woman who was born in Kakuma or the Dadaab refugee camp still cannot access employment? How is it that a young woman or even a young man who was born and bred in this country, but they're from another country, cannot, they've gone to school because, a lot has been done, and I really like the theme for this year is accelerating progress. So it means a lot has been done, but then we still need to accelerate progress. But then, how is it that a young woman who is from Kakuma refugee camp or wherever in this country gets a scholarship to maybe where? Catholic University of East Africa. But then after graduating, they still go back to the camp and they're not able to access employment, And so for me, even as we think about how we can accelerate their inclusion in the labor market, we really need to implement the laws. And I really like what you said about having laws. It is not about the laws that we have, but then how can we implement them? When having a movement pass is a barrier, then how does this young woman travel for an interview? If they get this employment and they're not able to get work permits, and there are a lot of biases and stereotypes around who a migrant is, then that already cuts them off from, performing well in the labor markets. And so one of the things that I think should happen is, number one, change of mindset. Change of mindset by all stakeholders. Because, we've heard the story of Frida, and you can see where Sharon is. Can we start seeing people for who they are, because they have all the potential that it takes. All they need is for them to get an opportunity. And so, seeing people for who they are, and changing mindsets, whether it's the government, whether it's development workers. What are these programs that we are giving to the migrant workers? How are we perceiving them? Because if the women economic empowerment programs or economic empowerment programs that we are implementing with the migrant workers are really around giving them small monies, because it's either around dressmaking and tailoring and soap making. We're not saying that those are bad, but then are they able to shift power dynamics in their homes? Are they able to give them an extra income in their home? And so just thinking deeply on what are we doing, even as practitioners, to really change, to really advance the inclusion of young women and men in the economic sector. But then the other thing is really around the private sector. I know the private sector is the second largest employer after the government. And for the private sector is where is the money, where are the profits? And we know that things are shifting. The migrant community are actually going to school, they're actually graduating. We have Noella on this panel, so it means they're getting an education. Are we able to really link them to work? Because there are very many visible and invisible barriers. Are we really able to step back and ask ourselves, what are their lived realities? What are their needs? And how do we address them for them to actually get into the labor market? Whether it's employment or even business. Because Kenya is progressive. We have policies that actually allow different migrants, including refugees, to work or to do business. However, what is the cost of getting these work permits? So are we able to really go into the nitty-gritties of what it takes to properly include young women and men in the economic sector? And what does that inclusion mean? Does it mean when I give you a small business, I have included you? Does it mean when I give you an education, I have included you? So we really need to step back and interrogate how are we including young women and men. But lastly, because we are in an educational institution, skilling is actually a pathway to either employment or entrepreneurship. But then what are these skills that we are giving the young people? Because if they're not market relevant, then the industry will ask, yes, you brought people, but then they're not matching what I need. So offering market relevant skills that will actually allow young people, migrants, to get into the market will really be important. But at the bottom line, let us address the visible, those that we can see, our mindset and all that, but also the invisible barriers that they face.
Thank you so much, Rose. Remember, this next question is for you. Femnet has been at the front line advocating for women's rights. So what actions should be taken to maximize the benefits for women migrating abroad and into Kenya?
Thank you so much, Ruma. And I also want to acknowledge what our previous speakers have spoken about. I think in terms of actions that can be taken, say for migrants who are already migrating into Kenya, I think Ruth mentioned issues around mind shift. My colleague from EVOS mentioned about shifting narratives, and the excellence also mentioned about experiences. So I think the first action is just having the awareness in terms of the global trends, and also recognizing that when mostly women and girls migrate, most of them, they are living situations, like when they come to Kenya, I think it's important to know that Kenya is actually a very interesting hub for destination, for countries which are in conflict. They could be from DRC, they could be from Sudan. And most of the women who migrate in cases of crisis, they also had a life where they were probably entrepreneurs, maybe they were going to school, but because of that sort of like disturbance, they are able to come in. So I think it's to have a spirit of embracing and also understanding that most women are peace brokers. So when they are here, I know of women from DRC who have actually come up with the women in DRC migration. They have a community, and they are communicating in terms of advancing peace talks. And Kenya then provides that haven for them to be able to get involved and engage in peace processes. But whilst all that is happening, it's important that they also survive and they also thrive. So I think it's good to also raise awareness, to also remove some of the stigma that we see being associated with migrant women and those who usually come in. Another area is obviously around policies. Most women who are coming in, we know from Uganda, most of them are coming as domestic workers, and there isn't a lot of information. Most of them do not even have the documentation. So I think actions in supporting their documentation, it's so difficult to get a passport, it's expensive. We know the experiences. So most of them come illegally, and most of them are also recruited by agencies, and they are also treated and exploited in terms of their employment. So I think having protection policies that also can support migrant workers who are coming in, so that they can also be able to experience and they can also be able to benefit as well. I know there's issues around protection of the labor market, which is important, and I think Kenya, the minister, the representative from the gender ministry also mentioned some of the policies that are there, which are already in place. For example, the labor migration policy, which is already ongoing, the migration policy also for Kenya for those that are migrating outside, but also some of the institutions, some of the working group, like the mechanisms for coordination, and also the advisory committees around migration. But I think interestingly, Kenya is also coming, there's a proposed Kenya School of Migration, which I think, being in an academic institution, it will be very important to ensure that within that curricula which is being developed, gender issues are actually at the forefront and are also embedded. I think we heard that over about, I think it's the percentage of 59% of migrants are women. So if 59% of migrants are women, then it's important to have policies that are gender transformative, gender sensitive, that actually center and address that. Another action, I think, so this is really around public awareness, etc. Another action is also to strengthen the capacities and to, you know, we have these policies. I think Ruth talked about having policies, but their implementation and their awareness. So I think it's to ensure that the policies also go to county levels. Here we have a devolved governance system, and you find that migrants are just not only in Nairobi, but you go to Kisumu, you go to the border towns. Most of them you find a lot of immigrants or people, mostly women, who are there. And some of the officials might actually not know how to deal with them. I think there have been cases where you find women are imprisoned, yes, because they might not have the legal documents, but in some cases they're actually part of trafficking and they should be in a safe house. But if the police, if the different officials are not aware, you know, there's some raiding sometimes of foreigners, businesses and the like. So that also is important to say the policies that are being developed, how do they also devolve to the county level? How do we support in strengthening the capacities of the respective, you know, there could be the police, even the ministries of protection, for them to be able to implement those policies as well. Another action I think is around data. There isn't a lot of data in cases of the trends, you know, really understanding the big realities. So I think it's important for also getting this data also incorporated into the national data systems as well. Most migrants are undocumented, and it's important to ensure that even as being in an academic institution, we also start generating a lot of data which will also contribute to ensuring that there are policies which are responsive, and also there is advocacy action in terms of our protection as well of migrants. And I think when we talk of data, there is also a tendency where we find a lot of research going on migrants. So they end up feeling, you know, today there's this organization coming in, they're asking them, this organization is coming in. So I think there's also needs to work and to collaborate with researchers and institutions who are doing work on migration as well. So that's for those that are in. But for migrants, like I think the question is for also what should happen for our migrants, for Kenyans who are also migrating to other countries as well. And I think in 2021, there were about 53,000 women who migrated to the Middle East, and in 2022, about 106. So the data for 2023 is not yet out, but wherever you go, you see a lot of women who are leaving and who are going into the Middle East, and we have seen a lot in terms of some of the abuses and the like, and I think the government of Kenya is also coming up with policies in terms of protecting women who are going there to do domestic work, because they have a lot of remittances and the like. Yeah.
Okay. Remember, I like that you've spoken about documentation and the women from Kenya who've traveled to the Middle East. Adelaide, you've been in the aviation industry for over 30 years. And yes, the women come and they have the proper documentation, but how can you tell that this woman is traveling safely and will not run into headwinds once they get to their destination?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me here on this special day to discuss this special topic. But first, before I answer your question, I would like to inform you that Kenya Airways has a fully launched policy which came into effect on 1st of January 2023, and we launched it together with UNODC on 6th of March. In fact, we are celebrating 1 year. And our chief guest during the launch, of course, was our parent transport, we call him our parent because we are under Ministry of Transport, that is Honorable Murkomen, as well as Honorable Florence Bore, because this involves labor migration. So thereafter, what we did, we have a lot of activities that we've done to implement this particular policy, and one of the things is create awareness. Everybody has talked about awareness, because how will I be knowing what to look for? So for the cabin crew, for the pilots, and for the check-in staff, we have specific training on detection, the indicators, and the reporting protocol. And for the airline, what has been advised to us by the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, is do no harm. What we can do as an airline is just protect, prevent, but we cannot do the other ones, like prosecution, we cannot do that. So for example, if Mashirima has come to the airport and is traveling with, let me pick on Anthony, and we ask you, where are you traveling to? And Anthony keeps responding, or you ask something like, who will be receiving you? And Anthony keep on responding, then we know something is very wrong. I'm in security department, so what we have done, we, together with the law enforcement, we know the high-risk flights, and we know the hot routes. Let me call them the hot routes, because those are the potential routes for trafficking. So we work very closely, and we have a screening tool that we use. If it is for, and indeed, yes, women are the most vulnerable because of the domestic servitude and sexual exploitation and all that. So those are some of the indicators that we look for, but of course there are so many of them. But you can't say, okay, he answered the question, so she must be trafficked. No. There are other things like document verification. We want to know whether this group is always being transported by the same travel agency, and we're working very closely with the government.
And so what role then can the private sector play towards making positive strides to reduce those vulnerabilities, more so for the fact that women migrants face a lot of challenges in that migration journey?
The first thing that you have to do when you're dealing with issues of migration, number one is safety and security. We need to protect the migrants to ensure that before they travel, during the transit, and even in their destination, as well as when they come back, they have to be protected. I think they need to be given enough information to make sure that where they're going to be working is actually not fraudulent. They should be able to be given the correct information. So we should have something in place. We should also have, like my colleague said, data, because that is the only way you can know whether you're successful, what to do, where to adjust, how to close the gaps, etc., etc. Now the government also, they can also help the private sector, especially in issues of prosecution. Because private sector, there's nothing much we can do except rely so much on the government. But this one has to be a collaborative and deliberate effort. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adelaide. And now to Rowena. Your parents sought refuge in Kenya following the 1994 Rwanda genocide. Could you kindly share your experience as a woman migrant?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Celestia Zuela Muzaramente, and indeed, my parents came to Kenya back in 1985 after fleeing the genocide in Rwanda. And the first destination was actually the Democratic Republic of Congo. And after some time, the condition in Congo is also volatile. So instead of moving back to Rwanda, they found settlement in Kenya. And in the process, of course, because they came as married, I was born in Kenya and was brought up in Kenya. And I'm so grateful to have been brought up in a peaceful environment. But again, that does not remove the process, or rather how I was brought up. It's quite different when I share my experience with someone who's a Kenyan who was born and brought up in Kenya. So for example, for me, the first time I went back to my country is 2016 after finishing my secondary education. And that's the time when you have to know your cousins, you have to interact with your aunties, you have to know your people. And growing up in Kenya, I've had that challenge of identity, because you're not a Kenyan, but again, you can't fully identify yourself as a person, as a Rwandese, because you're not together with those people. But again, I've been able to embrace the uniqueness and the history that we've had. And in the course of my study, at some point, I really wanted to be a Kenyan, actually. And I tried learning the languages, be it Kikuyu, English, Swahili, Luo. I have some knowledge in such many languages, but in campus, my mind was opened. And I was I'm a social person, and at some point I wanted to go into politics. And that's when it hit me that indeed when politics in campus, where you come from really matters. And that's when I was able to speak with the Dean of Students and tell him, I'm Rwandese, of course I've been in Kenya, I know the systems, I know how the students operate, and I would really love to represent them in a way. And so after so much deliberation, we went through the constitution review, and they came up with the post of the International Students Representative. And as much as I've been in Kenya, of course, my experience has been different and difficult in terms of student passes, in terms of gaining internships, because as you're told, number one qualifications must be a Kenyan citizen. And that is one thing that I learned. So it's been a beautiful experience altogether, and I'm a proud Rwandese living in Kenya and a global citizen as much.
Thank you, Laura. You sound more Kenyan. Thank you very much. Yeah, could you speak a little more about what further actions should be pursued to ensure that the migration journey addresses the needs of young women migrants, and even just settling, as you say. There are things you want to get done, but because you're not Kenyan, then there are a bit of challenges.
Yes, so actually the speakers before me have spoken into that, and what a young woman migrant like me needs at the foremost, firstly is education. I think that the human rights are quite fundamental, and regardless of where you are, at any particular time you need to enjoy your human rights. And also education, for me I was privileged in the sense that I gained scholarships that took me through the primary education to secondary and up to the tertiary level. But that is not the case for many student migrants, or rather for many young women migrants who could be in the country in the capacity of refugees or any other capacity. So with education, there's need to be streamlining in the sense of admission processes. We find it difficult, even the admission process for a foreigner is quite difficult and different as opposed to a commoner. Number two, the accessibility, affordability, and the quality of education. So I might be willing to go to school, but again, the school fees are high because I'm a foreigner. And if indeed I'm a refugee, it means I don't have the money, I don't have the capacity, and I'm grateful for a university like Choir. I wish I'd known it before. Yes, because they embrace the international students community and they support them. So there's that support that needs to be given, and there's the global compact to migration that speaks also into the education of the migrants. And we also see that documentation, for me to be enrolled in a school, I need a student pass. So getting that student pass from the Department of Immigration is quite difficult, it's quite challenging. I'll speak in the context of Kenya, it's quite a challenge, and probably that would be something that they can look to make the process seamless. Again, if you're a migrant, also the embassies and the consulates of the countries of origin should also be able to go back and track their people, the citizenry, to enable them to get proper documentation in their countries. Again, I'll go to cohesion and integration. In that, we should be able to break the bias and the perceptions towards migrants. As the other speakers have said, you will think that most hawkers who cause chaos are Rwandese, because right now you know that the Rwandese are the ones selling these mandazis and hot coffee in the evening. They are the barber shops. You think that probably the sort of xenophobia that's happening in South Africa is somehow creeping into the system in Kenya. And so if you just see this person as someone who's trying to make ends meet, I think, and welcome them into the society, breaking the bias, it should be able to enable us as migrants have a more peaceful and rather stay in the country and be able to pursue our goals. But again, we talk about decent jobs. I've done my bachelor's in international relations and diplomacy, and getting an internship was an actual task, because for my course we talk about ministries, and the ministries are very clear. Must be a Kenyan citizen. And I'm grateful that I eventually got an internship opportunity, but really when you're transiting from school into the job market, we should be able to have mutual recognition of skills and mutual recognition of competencies, in the sense that if I have a BA in education, maybe from Uganda, I can come to Kenya and teach the same. But because the world is now a global village, so the same teachers who are coming from Kenya go to Zimbabwe and teach, and vice versa. So when you open the markets, when you talk about the African continental free trade area, whereby there are free movement of people and goods, if people can have the goodwill in opening indeed the borders and accepting the migrants into their countries, it makes the work easier for both the receiving countries and the sending states. And again, probably finally, the access to healthcare. So healthcare is expensive even for the natives of the countries of destination. So there's need for probably the Ministry of Health, the CSOs, the other non-state actors, like we have the Red Cross and all other agencies, to really look into the matters of sexual, reproductive, maternal health care. For these women, like refugees who come into the country, probably they've suffered rape, gender-based violence, you have this pregnancy, you don't know how to go through it. So there's need to really check on the women's health, on the women's reproductive health, and other probably points is just information sharing, the cross-border points, check on it. And last but not least is to ensure that these laws, or rather these conventions that we've had, the Convention on the Protection of the Rights of the Migrants and Members of the Family, we've had the labor laws, if they could be implemented, that would really go a long way into ensuring that a young woman migrant like me and like many others probably in the audience have a nice time, or rather enjoy a comfortable stay in their countries of destination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. And indeed, I agree with the presence of Stella Chepngeno and Eileen Kilimi from the Office of the First Lady, together with Ms. Grace Wasike, that you've really listened, and that message will really get to the right offices. And at this juncture, I would like to ask anyone who has a question to kindly raise their hand so that they can be able to participate in this engagement. We don't want to hog the time here. So, the questions are there. Kindly tell us your name, where you're from, and then ask your question or make your comments. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stella Chepngeno from the Office of the First Lady. Thanks so much, the panelists. Personally, I've learned a lot from what you've shared, and of course, we've taken point. I wanted to just ask a question in regards to financial inclusion of migrants, in regards to the remittance flows, which is interlinked. My question is in the aspect of protection of the investments of the migrants. What is there for them? Because we've had so many people complaining that they have sent their money back home, especially those who are outside our country, and the investment is not protected. They come back and they find that nothing happened. How do we ensure that that is protected as well? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good is Kevin Ekonyo from Center for Domestic Training and Development. I know much to do with domestic workers. So I think that informs from what Stella is saying, the issue of migrant workers. And I think probably this I could throw to Ruth from MasterCard. In terms of inflows and how they're able to send the money, it's quite an issue because when they get to the destination countries, they don't get to have access to banks there. So their employers end up paying them in cash, put them in under the mattresses, and when they are returning back, actually that money is not there. So they end up coming up with nothing. So are there programs, and probably Anthony, I know he's my former colleague, that are there programs that are there to actually support the remittances of these flows, inflows rather, that they have become quite pertinent in this country, and even a big foreign exchange earner. So, thank you.
My name is Noah Tudu from the Technical University of Kenya. So my question was specifically to Anthony and Ruth. We have talked about changing narrative and inclusion, but then we all come from different cultures. Cultures are very different from what ambassadors say in Europe and us in Africa here. So how do we localize that change in culture and inclusion so that it can benefit our migrants and those that come from abroad? The second question goes to Her Excellency. So we see diplomacy in terms of multilateral agreements that are signed between mostly the labor migration sector. But then how embassies, different host countries and second countries ensure enforcement and not rather the optics of implementation? Thank you.
So thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sharon Wahongo, a student at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. Mine is just an addition. I would love for there to be centers where refugees get help in terms of their mental health, because most refugees live in fear of being deported or being discriminated against. Also, as a country, we need to curate more refugee-responsive budgets. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Over to our distinguished to answer the few questions before we go to others. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's begin with that first question, Katarina. The agreements between countries, how do they translate to protecting the rights of migrants?
Of course, because there are agreements, but as well we transcend them into actions and our plans and strategies. So, for example, what we do in Kenya concerning migration and empowerment of women and to have the same opportunities for both male and females. Every activity we do, for example, in foreign policy connection with Kenya, with the entire region, on in every level, every tool, we have two horizontal priorities. One is that we help and assist to adapt to the consequences of climate change, and the second one is an empowerment of females. So any activity Slovakia do, even through global development assistance or through any other tools, it has to have those two elements. Concerning the agreements, meaning we support it in practical terms. Of course, we do as well have a dialogue with the government on government level. We provide expertise on capacity building in order for both parties to fulfill specific criteria, because we do understand not every country is ready or does still need some transformation process to fully fulfill the international agreements on different levels. But we do it on two levels. Speaking to the government and helping, assisting capacity building, and second, in our actions, we always ask the host country, what we can do for you, how can we assist? Plus, everything we do, it has to consist and fulfill those criteria that are a part of the international agreement. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but this is what we do.
Anthony, I think there was a question or two for you. Perhaps you can begin to answer, then Ruth can join in.
Thank you. I think I'll start with the latest one about culture, right, and tradition. And I can start by examples. For those of us who watch television, we probably watched our senior Alex Chavada doing There in Abroad, and mostly documenting Kenyan's experiences outside of another country and how they're excelling. Have you ever thought that those would be Kenyan migrants from other countries? But we are following them there and telling their stories. Now try to reverse that and say, if we started looking here at what other nationalities are doing in our own countries and telling and amplifying those stories, will that make any difference? Probably to. So I think the storytelling around that and being intentional about going out and finding these really transformative stories. We speak about inclusion. It's not just financial inclusion only, but also think about it politically. And again, I'll go back and think of examples of Kenyans. We've had some of them, of course, emigrated to other countries. Some of them got elected to be mayors, to be councillors, and all that. Let's try to flip that and see. Do we have any immigrant in Kenya who's contested for any election here? Have we given them opportunities? And they don't even have to be elected positions at a ward level or parliamentary level. Think about your neighborhoods, because they live in estates. We got groups there. You probably meet a lot of WhatsApp groups, but they're neighborhood associations. How do we include them in those conversations about our neighborhood without branding them, we're a Somali, we're a what, and all that? So when we speak about inclusion, it's at the lowest level that we can get, because that's now where that starts growing up, and then we gain confidence and allow them to do other things. Then I'll also speak about the Hawala system by the Somalis. For those who might be familiar with this, I know for those in the security sector might be concerned about money laundering and all that. But how did that system start? When Somalis came to Kenya when things lit up in their country, they had to find ways of distributing money and probably receiving money. And they came up with a very simple system that is based on trust. You simply walk in and say that. Of course, the challenge is there, but if you look at that innovation at that particular point and see that these are people who thought through the circumstances and came up with a system that was assisting them, how can we not tell that story from that perspective? And we simply go back then to terrorism, money laundering, and all that. Yet, it is happening. So we think about inclusion. These are everyday things that are invisible to us. I think for us is to open up our eyes and simply say, there is so much that is going on that can be celebrated. But for some reason, we've chosen not to see that. And I think that shift in terms of narratives is looking for those simple, everyday stories that are transformative and casting our brothers and sisters in a different light, because these stories do exist, these issues are available. It's just for us to open up and minimize on the branding, minimize on the pointing of fingers, and just see them for who they are and allow those stories to be told.
Ruth?
Thank you very much. I think the other important thing, just to build up on what my brother has said, is creation of awareness, because at times we assume that people know about migrants, about the people that live close to them, but at times they don't. So they go with the narrative that has been perpetuated over time, and the branding that has been perpetuated over time. So creating awareness and really telling stories of change on what they can be able to do. And we're already hearing those stories of change. So amplifying those voices is really important. But also, partnering with organizations that are working with migrants. And I would say local organizations that are working with migrants, because these organizations are in communities, then they are trusted partners of the migrants. And so migrants can easily walk in and get services. And increasingly, then we really need to partner with people that migrants trust the most, So that really helps in them seeking for mental health services or reproductive health services and all the other services that are there for them. I forgot to mention that I work for the MasterCard Foundation, but then we are sisters with MasterCard Inc., which is the financial institution. And so we exist to really provide or enable young people to get to dignified and fulfilling work. And young people, from diverse walks of life. So whether it's refugees, to young people in the rural areas, to persons with disability and all that. But then in how we enable them to get to dignified and fulfilling work, financial inclusion is actually a major pathway. And what you've really done is, number one, to really work at the policy level, because again, you can give all the loans and the grants and do all manner of women economic empowerment. But if the policy environment is not conducive, then migrants will end up doing the same businesses that they've done over time. And so if you measure what you've put in vis-a-vis the level of empowerment, then it doesn't match. So how do we strengthen the policy environment to be conducive for migrants to actually do business, So financial inclusion is one of the things. But then the other thing is really around working with institutions that reach the most marginalized. For example, if it's that Hawala business, if it is the pathway or the avenue to get to the migrants, then we find ways of actually working with them. Because we know, and the young people have told us, that if you program for us without involving us, then you go wrong. Because most of the time we imagine that this is what migrants need. Yet they actually know what they need. And at times it's, please work with Hawalas and not your Tier 1 financial institutions. So we really tailor to the needs of the people that we serve.
Memory, briefly, could you talk about the protection of migrants' investments? And I think Adelaide will also speak on that briefly as well.
I wanted to just say that Kenya is one of the leading, if not the leading, fintech African company in Africa, and with M-Pesa. So I'm also, I don't know whether I'm a migrant, but so with M-Pesa, it allowed me to mention M-Pesa. I'm not advertising for them. They actually have an app where you can use. They've partnered with Western Union. So from anywhere in the world, you can actually do your remittances through M-Pesa. So you can send money from here to anywhere in the world, and if you're out there, you can also send money directly to M-Pesa. So I'm just thinking, I think in terms of, I think we already have a lot of digital solutions in terms of the money, but in terms of protection, and I will share my experiences, is when you're outside, when you're working outside as a migrant, the people in your host country, sometimes they're just their ATM. So when they want, and they'll come up with stories, the child is sick today, you'll be told so-and-so has died, I need to do this chama. So you're literally an ATM for them. And sometimes they will also understand in terms of how the amount of sacrifice that you'll be making for you to be able to have that. So I think in terms of protecting some of those investments, I do know there are financial institutions that actually support, say you want to build a house, you're in Kenya, you're in the diaspora. There are these communities where most of the embassies, I know for one, the Kenyan embassy in the US, for example, they've got very good, they bring in investors, and they also support, like if you're outside, then they can support the locals for your investments to be protected. But I think we also need policies around that. Yeah. And I think it's also something that we see a lot, especially for women. Most of them lose their money. Most of the women who have gone out, particularly to the Middle East, sometimes when they will make their money, most of it is they are not given enough financial advice. I think that's where Kina Mastercard, that's where GiveUs, the different organizations come in to then support them for that. I wanted to say something about that.
Because of time, kindly, and I like what you said. You know, we all like the rich auntie who's abroad, and we don't understand the kind of sacrifices that they make to be able to look like the rich auntie. Adelaide.
Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we must create awareness. We have to create awareness through the social media, through the media itself, and also have like banners, podcasts. Let's look for ways we can reach even the grassroots levels. Before I was trained on human trafficking, I had no idea what human trafficking was. Although I've been in aviation for 30 years, I've worked in the Middle East, I didn't know what human trafficking was. But again, it's because this one was never a standard for us. So conversations also are very important. They say charity begins at home. I can tell you for free, my family know about Tip and Song. And that way we talk to our friends, our extended family members what this is all about. And I can tell you for free, I've been called so many times to be told, you know, I think there's someone who is being trafficked here. I'm on this flight. This is a friend. And actually, when we followed up, it was true. Why? Because they have the indicators. Partnership. We can't do this alone. And partnership here is, for example, what Kenya Airways has done. It has partnered with the main key stakeholders at the airport. We have also partnered with IOM because they're the subject matter experts on this one, and we have a strategy. We have partnered with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. The victims centered themselves, and that is why Madam was saying tomorrow we will be celebrating with the victims of trafficking, and that will be part of awareness campaign. But the government is very, very critical on this one because they have the platform, they have the machinery and all that. So that is what I would suggest we have conversations. And also sometimes I wonder, is tourism really tourism? Because when you read some of the reports, you will see tourism now is not what we used to know, because we'll find there's a lot of sexual exploitation. But even the girls, let me talk about the women, do not even know that they're being trafficked. And especially from experience, when someone is going to the Middle East or some of those countries, hot countries, it's very difficult for you to convince them that they're being trafficked. They don't know. So protection is very, very key through awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Noella, your final word as we close this panel discussion.
Okay, probably I'll also speak into the investments issue. Most of the times also when people abroad think that their families are contractors, the people who are experts in the construction maybe area, because I think they're most vulnerable in construction especially. So you send money and then when you come back home 2 years down the line, there's only a shack as a representation of probably the many dollars that you've sent home. So I think also the diaspora, the migrants, wherever they are, they should be able to liaise with the appropriate people, as Nori has said. There are people in the embassies, the people who liaise with the embassies, probably banks that can be able to educate them to free them from the risk of losing their investments. Again, probably before, as we conclude, when we speak of migration, we think about probably refugees, the voluntary labor migrants, but there's also the climate-induced migration, the climate-led migration, whereby we've seen that women have also suffered in countries such as Ethiopia, whereby when it faced drought, when the people are migrating into other new communities, the young women there were being exchanged for cows into animal marriages. And so you see this is a woman who has been deprived of the right of growing up, of childhood, of the normal childhood, and deciding as to when and how and to whom they can get married to. So climate is quite a sensitive area because it's things we have to work to ensure to contain or to regulate the adverse effects. But again, we have to see and broaden the scope of migration to also include these vulnerable communities, the vulnerable women who have scarce and inadequate resources to tackle the effects and the migration that comes from it. And as I close, I would like to say that the world really needs strong women, and may we lead them, may we raise them. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noella, Adelaide, Memory, Ruth, Anthony, Her Excellency Katerina, for gracing this panel. And I believe we've learned so much this morning. We have this morning into afternoon. And as I allow them to take their seats, I would like to ask you all to please give them a big round of applause as they do so. Thank you. Thank you. And as they take their seats, I would like to call upon Ms. Sharon Dimanche to give her closing remarks. And to also give us a brief summary of what you've learned. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, our moderator. And I would say a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. That was quite insightful, sharing your personal experiences. I think we've learned quite a lot. There are lots of very interesting points, which I believe if we carry through with us, we'll be able to invest more in women, ensure their protection, that they are all safe, and they can contribute to sustainable development and look at more safe migration. I had a lot of, something that was more recurrent on strategy, how do we look at more policies that empower, that are inclusive, protecting migrants, change of mindset. I think that's something which came out strongly. How do we change our mindset? Yes, we might have very good policies, but if we keep stuck in our old ways of doing things, if we don't change our mindset, things won't be the same. Skills development, I would say, and the right skills that are relevant to the market. Data was very, very critical, and I think this is very, very important. If you're looking into data, sometimes we have migrant people on the move who leave, we don't know how many people have left, what kind of professions, and those who are coming back in terms of reintegration, we cannot really provide the support they need if we don't have data. But that would equally inform our strategies. If we don't have data that is very comprehensive, then we can't design very good strategies, very good policies that are centered on protecting and empowering women. Access to universal health coverage, I think that is something which came out. Ideally, we want to see how do we protect, how do we ensure that our migrants, the women who are very vulnerable, can actually have access to such services. Financial inclusion, I think of migrants, that's very, very critical. How can they even access those services? Do they have, in terms of security, to be able to get the funding that they need to move, to engage in their businesses? But what came out more striking is how do we get women involved in high position, executive position, because when you're there, you can actually influence strategies when they're being developed, they can further protect and empower women. Now with this, there's a lot, but I think we want to see how can we put all this together, and in the interest of time, I won't get into everything. One more important thing is on climate-induced mobility, where we see more and more women in exchange for cows. Of course, again, issues of protection that come in here, and how can we have more climate-smart responses that we want to bring to the table to protect more women. Now, I don't know how many of us know more about IOM. I didn't get into that detail. But for us to understand what we are doing as IOM, we have our new global strategy that focuses on three main things. One, saving lives and protecting people on the move. And I think what we discussed today focuses on how do we save lives, how do we ensure more protection of migrants. We are focusing on women now, on children, girls, but I would say everybody who is on the move, how do we ensure their safety? But also driving solutions to displacement, where we have issues of climate change. Why are people actually even moving? We have seen many women move because they do not have the services back home. Maybe the life that they ideally want to live is not there, so they are forced to leave their families. Recently, I was discussing with one of the ministers, and the issues which they raised is that how can we include, even in those agreements, maybe in the policies back home, when women leave, they leave their families, their husbands somehow run away, get to other women, and then you come back home, you have broken families. So how do we ensure that in terms of displacement, in terms of protection, actually we take care of even our social structures, families back home? And the other part, the third point is on facilitating regular pathways to safe migration, which is one of those other third strategic priority IOM is looking into. And the safe pathways is how can we have agreements? I think this came in strongly. How can we have more balanced agreements with countries of origin and destination? In most cases, the global south and the global north, somehow south feels more inferior, as if the global north is doing us a favor. If we have our youth going to work abroad, we think, okay, they should dance the tunes of the global north. But I think in this, we all have something to lose or to gain if we have very comprehensive regional pathways. Ambassador did mention about some of these agreements, and I would like to mention today, within the regional pathways, what IOM is doing is to facilitate Europe-Africa conversation on how you can facilitate regional pathways. And you look into more comprehensive to actually have more ethical ways of having workers come into the countries. And here, if you look at the global south, we have a youth bulge where so many skilled youth, but then lack of employment. And on the other side, in the north, we have huge, labor shortage because of the aging population. So that demographic sort of imbalance is there, and it means if we leverage on what we have, the youth here and the jobs the other end, then I think we are all going to benefit from this whole regional pathways. I know a lot has been said, but again, I think we need to reflect more collectively, not just government, not just students here, not just the private sector we have, but I think it's a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach. Each one of us has a role to play in ensuring that we actually have regular, safe migration, that we can all invest in our women. We know that women are the backbone of everything that we are doing. Each and every one of us here, I'm sure a woman has played a significant role in your life. Maybe even just simply going back to our families. Maybe when I was a student, when I go back home from school and my mom is not there, I feel insecure, I feel unsafe. Maybe that food, that little leftover which was, ideal, I would have wanted to eat to go back to school, I can't find it. So I'm sure you all look forward to going home because we have our mothers there. Due respect to men, but in most cases, women are there to nurture us and raise us up and make us who we are today. So let us all work together collectively and contribute and support and invest in women so that we have that development that we would like to see. And lastly, again, thank you so much to our host. Thank you for welcoming us warmly, and thanks to our students. Those are very interesting questions, comments that you shared with us. And let's commit. And remember, on this day, we were at this university, the Catholic University, to discuss on how to invest in women. And we should all take a lesson. The action should start with each one of us, with me, with you, and take those baby steps to make a difference. Yes, we can. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Sharon. for those remarks. I would like to now call on our host, Madam Jerry Kanyere, to come up on stage and give us her closing remarks. Let's give her a round of applause. That applause does not match her smile, guys. And as she makes her way here, I would just like to make an announcement about how we are going to exit the room. For students, kindly use the door on the right. For the VIPs, kindly use the door on the left. And that is because there will be coupons for lunch that will be given. So kindly adhere to those exits. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Mashrima. I think mine is more of a vote of thanks. I've learned so much, and Sharon has captured most of it. First of all, to thank the panelists, because this was amazing. It was awesome. We learned so much. Kenya Airways, I need to make special mention of you for coming out of the box of profiteering to do what you're doing. But that doesn't excuse you for not paying my dividends for the last 10 years. We'll deal with that a little later. But since I also represent a very special migrant group, because students are actually migrants, yeah? Until we send them out to the world where they belong, there are two things that came through, perhaps three again. One is Her Excellency spoke about women holding executive positions so that they can amplify their voices from there. And sadly, most of the executive positions were platforms that you can amplify would either be political, the corporate ladder, where else? The high-end, money maker. I don't know in the religious circle, maybe in Kenya, you become a shakahola preacher, you have some place where you can talk to people. And one of our concerns in this university where I incubate these young people is to tool them, to scale them. It's Ruth who talked about schooling, to give them some soft skills that over and above the technical things we teach them, we enable them to occupy these spaces. So my plea to you panelists is that please help us tool these students, help us to teach them some of the tricks of the games that you are in, some soft skills, people skills, negotiation skills, emotional intelligence, so that you become a sharp lawyer who knows all the legal principles. How do they negotiate your space even amongst the communities we work with? And that's the challenge I beg you guys to take home with you. Since I'm not charging you for being here, please pay us back by giving us a little of that. And we are so grateful. We also feel very, very honored, Sharon, that you chose this venue again, because it's something that's very dear to our hearts in this university, particularly also as women working in a Roman Catholic institution, which has also got very patriarchal structures that also have to be dealt with at another level. I might lose my job now. But anyway, we are so happy to have been part of this. It's a pity I didn't hear many students talk, but I'm sure they will be coming to see you privately. So thank you very much. We hope this conversation can go on, Sharon, and we can get addresses of these lovely people, especially during our next fundraiser. Thank you so much, and God bless you, and thank you for being part of that.
Thank you, Madam Jerry Kanyere. I like that she takes an opportunity and runs with it, talks about fundraising. I would just like to also let you know that there will be time to network with our guests today after a brief photo shoot. So once you exit, as I said, the VIPs use the exit on the left. Students kindly use the exit on your right. The first photo will be for the VIPs, and then we will have one with the students as well. But I will let you know how we will leave in what order. But for now, before we officially close this panel discussion, I would like to call upon Ruth Karani from Heart Kenya. He has a few remarks.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Bruce Alan Kimadi. I'm the representative for Heart for today. And I know you're wondering what Heart is. So first of all, I'll start by saying that HART is HAART, and so what we do is we deal in human trafficking. So for cases for human trafficking, sexual trafficking, children trafficking, children forced labor, we deal with that. So for today, I saw that the topic is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress for Gender Equality and Safe Migration. And I felt that it is best that I mention that there is an organization called HART, an NGO. And yeah, and first of all, us. So we not fail to mention that Madam Adeline stated a good point, that partnerships will go a long way to prevent such cases. And she has also mentioned that, I don't know if she has mentioned, but tomorrow there will be an event for the Women's Day, and it is in partnership with the UNODC and also KQ. You're welcome.
Thank you, Bruce. It's good that he's mentioned about the event tomorrow and he's invited us, but he hasn't told us where. Good thing Adelaide had mentioned to me that it will be at Our Lady Queen of Peace, South B, from 9 a.m. 9 a.m. So kindly, if you have time, make your way there so that you can learn a little more about the experiences that migrants have. And at this juncture, allow me to welcome Madam Grace Wasike to give us the closing remarks and officially close this panel discussion. Let's clap for her. She makes her way to the stage. Thank you. Karibu Madam Wasike.
Thank you, Mashirima, once again. And thank you, team, for your patience. I can see when we started, we were not covering. Okay, when I came to stand here, I saw we only had the middle row. And I'm happy that we have such a big team that has listened to our discussion. So for me, I think I would like to say that as the State Department for Gender, we are delighted with the discussions. There are things which came up that I've taken note of, and I'll be sharing with the PS. There was a running call on data, and maybe the best way to do it is to ensure that we put our indicators in most of these surveys that are done by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. For me, that will maybe one of the actions that we need to take so that issues of refugees, and especially data on sex disaggregated data, so that we know exactly what is happening to our citizens and how many people are also coming in. And I liked what Noella said, that there is an aspect of migrants not accessing employment. Maybe that is something that we need to also review our laws to ensure that issues of refugees are covered. But like I said, we are coming up right now we are developing two policies on women economic empowerment and the care policy. And because of my experience in this discussion, I'll ensure that, because I'm the one spearheading that, I'll ensure that issues of migrant workers are handled adequately. And I know there are organizations we are already working with that will participate in the finalization of those policies, and maybe we may consider now even having IOM in our discussion so that those issues are handled properly, and also the UNHRC, the refugee organization here, will ensure that before our policies are concluded, you've also inputted what you feel should be included in those policies. Otherwise, mine is to really thank the organizers for this event on behalf of my principal secretary, and also the participants for your enthusiasm and also for your patience, like I said, to have you go through these discussions. It's really something that we appreciate, and the partnerships that you've called upon will continue partnering. Actually, this is a State Department that is very open to partnerships. We have very many partners, and we really appreciate that we continue doing that. And sensitization, like the panel said, is key, and we need to step it up so that our citizens benefit. Because the reason why we are in those offices is to ensure that we grow our country. Nobody else will come from outside to ensure that Kenya is functional. So together with the development partners, together with the non-state actors, we are open as a State Department to ensure that we are dealing with issues of men and women. And I don't know whether you are aware that as a State Department, we also have a focus on the male child, and we've come up with a gender sector working group that is handling issues of male inclusion and the boy child. So even as you see it as a gender as a women issue, as a department, we don't want to look at it as a women issue. We want to handle issues of men, because men and women have specific needs, and that is what we should be addressing so that nobody is left behind. Otherwise, at this juncture, I don't want to waste more time. I don't want to stand in between the lunch and ourselves. So I would like to officially close this discussion and wish you still a happy Women's Day tomorrow. I'm also looking forward to it. I know tomorrow is just going to be a different day. And by the way, as I tell you about the men, maybe along the way we'll also be celebrating the International Men's Day, because that is something that as a country we've not been focusing on, but maybe in the next 1 or 2 years we'll also start putting focus on the International Men's Day. Otherwise, thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Madam Grace, for ensuring that you are not the stumbling block towards us getting lunch. And at this juncture, I'd like to ask all of us to stand, actually not all of us. Let's start with the VIPs who will leave, exit from the left, they use the left exit. And once we get outside, then I will give you directions as students on how we leave. And as we leave, I would like to acknowledge as well the presence of other UN agencies and civil society organizations that work with migrants, and of course there is a lot to learn from them. So when we have that time for networking after the photos, please feel free to engage with them. Karibuni. Students, remember to pick your lunch vouchers as you leave through the right exit. But let's give it a minute so that the VIPs can exit.